So we're going to see that this can produce some unusual mathematical equations as to how one becomes president. Let's look at a pretty standard election. That's the last one. The 2012 election was between the sitting president, Barack Obama, 44th president of the United States, a Democrat, and Governor Mitt Romney, former governor of Massachusetts, a Republican. Now, President Obama, Governor Romney had a fairly competitive election, competitive debates, so on and so forth. But when one looks at the election night results, one can see that despite it being a rather tight election, popular vote-wise, President Obama won a sizable electoral majority. If we look at the states that President Obama won to get 332 electoral college votes. Remember, he only needed 270. He won big states like California, Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, Ohio, Illinois. Even though Governor Romney won more states, many of the states that he won, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, have very small electoral college votes. Hence, more states doesn't necessarily always translate into more of a victory. President Obama's electoral college votes add up to 332. Therefore, he won a second term as president. We look at the overall popular vote, those a bit more narrow. Rounding up, President Obama had about 66 million popular votes, whereas Governor Romney had 60 million, which is pretty tight. President Obama had 51% of the vote. Governor Romney had 47%. So the popular vote was tighter than the Electoral College would show. That's because, with the Electoral College, it's winner take all. One of the classic examples of how the Electoral College is stronger than the popular vote is the 2000 election. The 2000 election was between Democrat Al Gore, who was the Vice President of the United States from 1992 to 2000, and Governor George W. Bush, son of the 41st President, George Bush, and also the governor of Texas. President Bush, soon to be President Bush, and Vice President Gore had a very tight election. Al Gore won the popular vote by almost 500,000 votes. Al Gore had 50,999,897 votes overall. George W. Bush had 50,456,002 votes. That's a difference of 543,895 Americans. 543,895 Americans more voted for Al Gore to be president. He won the popular vote. Yet we never talk of the presidency of Al Gore because he lost the election. How is that? Take a look at the Electoral College Map from the year 2000. As you can see, there's a lot of red on that screen. Governor Bush won a lot of states. However, many of the states he won narrowly. He won Ohio narrowly. He won Florida narrowly. In fact, he won the state of Florida by almost 500 votes. An entire state, 500 votes. That is about 0.00001% of the overall vote. The states that Al Gore won with big electoral college votes like California, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, he won in huge landslides. So he had a huge portion of the popular vote in those states. So even though Al Gore won in big states by big margins, he lost in smaller states by small margins, meaning that he still was getting a good amount of popular votes. But as we know, the Electoral College is winner take all. So even though Florida was divided by about 500 votes, George W. Bush got all 25 Electoral College votes. Even though the difference was in the thousands, George W. Bush got all 21 Electoral College votes. So it is, we're going to see as the election night goes on, even though George W. Bush had less Americans vote for him, he was able to secure more Electoral College votes with that winner-take-all system. So despite having 543,000 less votes than Al Gore, George W. Bush won the presidency. If you read up on that election more, you'll find out it's one of the most contentious elections in history. Florida took numerous recounts before it was finally called to George W. Bush. We didn't know who was going to be the president of the United States until mid-December of that year. Now, not every election is one where the popular vote is less than the Electoral College vote. Often, when we see that there's a landslide, popular vote-wise, there's also a landslide Electoral College-wise. Let's take a look at the 1984 election. That was between Walter Mondale, who was the former Vice President of the United States from 1976 to 1980 under the Carter administration, and the then sitting president, 40th president, Ronald Wilson Reagan. President Reagan, Republican, was very popular in 1984. The economy was booming. There's a lot of success in our foreign policy, and people were relatively happy with President Reagan. Now, his overall numbers, he won the popular vote by a huge portion. Reagan got 58.8% of the popular vote, whereas Mondale only got 40.6%. Now let's look at the Electoral College Map. Remember, it's winner take all. President Reagan had an electoral landslide, winning all but one of the 50 states. Vice President Mondale only came away with his home state of Minnesota and the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Other than that, he got no electoral college support. The country was painted red. So this is what an electoral college landslide looks like. Poor Fritz Mondale will be remembered in history as, election-wise, as America's biggest loser. Well, I think we've covered the election process, the electoral college process. So now that you've been elected, what's the last step you have to do to become president? You have to be inaugurated. Before the inauguration ceremony, you're referred to as the president-elect from the beginning of November until January 20th. Unless January 20th is on a Sunday, then it'll be the 21st. And you're sworn in on the steps of the Capitol. And most times, President Reagan, when he won in 84, to get re-sworn in and re-inaugurated, it was so cold, it was 0 degrees, they actually had it inside the Capitol building. But generally, it's on the steps of the Capitol. You make a big speech before the crowds, and you take the oath of office. As you can see, there's the oath there. I won't read through it all through you, but I expect in your presidential mockumentaries for you to be taking the oath of office. The "So Help Me God" isn't part of the writing in the Constitution, but George Washington said it at the end of his oath, and it's become one of the many precedents that Washington, our president, said. Every president has said it at the end of their oath. Here you see President Obama taking the oath of office, in 2013 being sworn in for his second term. You can see that Chief Justice John Roberts is the dude in the robe holding his hand up, administering the oath. So that's it. That's a process to get elected president. So now it's question time, friends. You get 2-for-1 question. First question is, what is the difference between the electoral vote and the popular vote? Write it down in your own words, and then move on to question number 5. And this is more of an analysis question. Given the fact that one can win the popular vote and still lose the presidency, should the United States continue to use the Electoral College system as a means of electing the President of the USA? Or should we use the popular vote? People who argue we should continue Electoral College say it's fair to small states. It gives them more of a say. Make sure that larger states don't drum out and force out smaller states. Those who are against it say that with the system that we have in place now, that a republic should be reflective of all the people. If the majority of the people support a candidate, that person should have the presidency. There's many other arguments. I want to hear yours. So defend your answer. Should we continue using the Electoral College? Yes or no? And once you're finished with that, you're all done with your executive branch lessons. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.